Welcome to the Discover Health podcast, where we explore the power of gut health, nutrition, and lifestyle to help you feel your best every day. I'm Dr. Josh Sharp, your guide on this journey to better digestion, more energy, and overall well-being. Each week, we'll dive into expert insights, practical tips, and real-life strategies to help you discover health. Ready to start discovering? Let's hit the trail. Welcome back to Discover Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Joshua Sharp, and with me today is Kyle Peche. And Kyle and I had the opportunity to meet at a conference in May, and we hit it off really well. We have a lot of things in common in terms of our natural health philosophy and how we like to work with clients. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Josh.
So at the age of 18, when most people should be filled with energy and good health, Kyle became severely ill. Brain fog, debilitating fatigue, severe constipation, GI issues, joint pain, skin rashes, and dozens of other symptoms. For many years, he carried a deep frustration of wanting to excel and achieve, but he felt blocked by the exhaustion and mental fogginess. He often found frustration through many conventional and even alternative healing systems. Through years, his years of obsessive research, he eventually found his way to health utilizing proper detoxification and mineral balancing. He discovered this work is not only a way to create lasting healing, but also a way to elevate one's physical and cognitive performance, far beyond what most people believe is their normal. With a passion ignited from his own suffering, he has been guiding people to achieve the same results that he's gotten for 4 years now. And I love that story. And in fact, that leads right into our first question. Firstly, I love asking my guests, what was it? What's the why behind what you do? And what got you into natural health? What got you into doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, so just like many practitioners now that I think are practicing real deep healing, it was my own health journey that pulled me into this. So I was forced into the work, really, whether I wanted to or not. I dropped into it because I was always dealing with some degree of brain fog, anxiety, kind of disassociation. And when I hit 18, I had the straw that broke the camel's back that sent me down a long, winding road of countless debilitating symptoms and unbelievable amount of money spent on different practitioners, conventional, alternative, and so on. And so really, once I found my solutions, which were, as was mentioned, detoxification and mineral balancing were my two biggest turning points. Once I healed and I discovered that, what I thought was a normal state of functioning was complete BS. There was actually a whole other state of human functioning and sensory experience and emotional stability one can access. Once I tasted that, I realized I had to do it for other people. So here I am 4 years later.
I love that you brought up that next level because I think there are so many people, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the majority of Americans that are walking around at a functioning level, just kind of here, not realizing they're missing out on that next level, on optimum, and what could be the possibility of what could be because they're making it, or what I like to say is, people think they're healthy. And I like to differentiate between, okay, not currently hospitalized doesn't mean healthy. It just means you're not currently hospitalized. So I really like that you brought up that next level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's very fascinating how the same issues that create the chronic symptoms, the chronic toxicity and the pathogens and the mineral imbalances and the other stressors are often also the things that limit the normal person. Because most people really are living in a low grade state of brain fog, anxiety, mild depression, mild apathy. mild pain, really not as much energy as they like. And I think probably the biggest one is the lack of zest for life, right? The lack of wanting to engage with life fully and creatively and be the artist of one's own path is not really an option that's available when you feel low grade fatigue and mitochondrial dysfunction.
Yeah, it's all you can do to just push through it and make it
Yeah.
through the day. It
Yeah.
seems difficult, and looking forward, looking ahead to tomorrow, almost can be overwhelming to some people, and they're
Yeah.
just going through life like that.
Yeah.
You overcame yourself 7 years of chronic fatigue, brain fog, skin issues, anxiety, panic attacks. Can you walk us through the moment, or maybe there was several moments that signaled when things started to shift for you, when that healing was actually taking place?
Yeah, yeah, those were huge. So, yeah, I'll kind of answer in a little more broad way and just share the context of my story generally. So, um, my mother dealt with a lot of kind of health issues that were more neurologically focused, and I was born, and I always again felt like low grade disassociation, brain fog, anxiety, even though I was a athlete, right, and I performed more or less okay. I still always felt like there was something deeply missing. Turns out, I found out later that my mother had several amalgam fillings in her mouth for many years before I was born. And she used to play with the little mercury balls as well. She would break open the thermometers and just mess around with them. So, it definitely explained a lot to her case and my own. But I tried so many different things and I kept running into this similar pattern of I would feel better for a little bit and then I drop back down to where I was before or worse, right? Where I have a worsening of my condition. And some of it was just the wrong thing. Other things were doing the right thing, but at the wrong time, right? And I can give some examples of that in a second. But I think the thing that really opened my eyes to real healing was I learned about detoxification. I hired a detox coach at the time. It was like 2017 or 2018. And he introduced me to drainage work, to binding. Cellcore I don't even think was a thing yet, right? It was so new, all that. But it was the first thing that gave me a sense of stability and relief. And then I tried to do parasite cleansing and it went a lot worse actually. And I tried to do chelation therapy because I didn't learn my lesson. And then it went a lot worse. I had a lot of redistribution, probably pulled mercury and lead and other metals from safe storage spots, like maybe the bone or the fat, and redistributed it into my kidneys because I was having all sorts of like lower back pain and, frequent urination and electrolyte issues, and my brain because I lost my mind. So it sucks. And I had to then take a few steps back and let everything go, stabilize again. And then it came across what was called mineral balancing. And mineral balancing was definitely the missing piece of my puzzle at that time because it was just so focused on rebuilding the body from the ground up. And that when I implemented that with some of the tools I had already known with detoxification, I found myself essentially symptom free after 6 months. And then as I continued to implement more and more detox tools now in the correct order, I kept finding myself elevating and elevating. And so, yeah, those I think were the two biggest things, right? So detox and then mineral balancing.
I really love that you brought up the fact that, okay, we found some issues and we just go after these big bad guys, heavy
Mm-hmm.
metals or parasites or whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you kind of crashed or you hit a wall. And that's something that happens so often in the functional health world is, practitioners find what looks like, oh man, this is the boss. This is the bad guy. We need to kill the boss. We need to kill the bad guy. But, you're dealing with a very sick, under functioning, person that has poor drainage pathways, poor mitochondrial performance, and then you're going to ask it to go battle this huge beast. And it's a recipe for disaster so often. And some people can make it through and be fine, but for so many, it doesn't work well. So I really like that you brought up detoxing the correct way and detoxing in order and mineral balancing, because I think those are really foundational issues to kind of build your body up before you go after those big bad guys. So you're you're going through this process and you've kind of noticed some things are changing. 6 months in, you're really starting to see some symptomatic improvement. Who were some of the guiding or inspirational figures for you in your journey from your own challenges to where you are today?
Mhm. Uh, I'm happy to give some shout outs here. So, the first person I worked with detox wise was a gentleman named Joshua Mason from the Detox Dudes. He has definitely scaled exponentially now, but I remember I was working with him when he was like only his like second year of coaching. And he definitely introduced me to a lot of things that were just not well known back then. Of course, the issue was there wasn't enough one-on-one guidance, and I kind of had to learn that the painful way, trying to do some of that stuff myself later on. But yeah, he I think was definitely one of the earliest people in this space. But I had to then draw from a lot of other brilliant minds to kind of apply and figure out my own case. And I think maybe one of the greatest geniuses of our times is Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt. He is a absolute G. He's mastered so many different healing arts, and he works with some of the absolute sickest people on the planet. So his lectures are fantastic. He has so much information online, and I would definitely credit him with giving me my brain back, because even with mineral balancing and creating a sense of like robust energy and immune system stability and such, I still never found my brain working at its higher capacity until I then addressed what was for me chronic Lyme disease and retroviral activation as well, which is something I learned from him. So it's something that I've found, even if people are more or less okay, often there can still be low-grade infections in the nervous system that can be screwing up their neurotransmitter balance and can keep them from a higher degree of creativity and deeper flow states. And it's something I experienced personally when I applied his work. There's other brilliant minds in this space: Dr. Stephanie Seneff for glyphosate, Dr. Judy Mikovits for understanding retroviruses, Dr. Chris Shade for understanding mercury and the 3 phases of liver detox. Of course, Dr. Jay Davidson and Dr. Todd Watts for their awesome work with cell core, carbon technology, and parasites. There's many more I could list, but I think those are probably my biggest influences.
Yeah, it's so great, and I've had some similar, some overlap, in people that I've studied their work, or I've been lucky enough to have Dr. Watts on the podcast. So thankful for people like that just they're on a mission, they're on a mission to find ways to help people get well. And so many of them are like you, that have their own story of personal transformation, suffering to then working with the suffering, trying to help the suffering. And so I love those stories, and I love to hear the why, what's behind what you're doing. And so now you're working with clients and you've got your own brand, Jyoti. Is that right? Did I say that properly?
Yeah, Jyoti.
Jyoti, I'm sorry. And then that means light. So how did you land on that name, and how does it kind of go along with what your mission is and your message?
Sure. So something I realized, and I don't want to be too out there with this, but something I did realize during my detoxification process and cleaning my physical body out of pollutants and heavy metals and the parasite influences is that I had a sort of awakening in terms of seeing the world very differently, because I could perceive things differently, because my level of awareness changed, my senses changed, everything became a lot sharper, right? My vision became a lot sharper. My sense of taste became sharper. The way I felt music and connected to things became a lot deeper, and to other people as well, of course, but to the world in general. That sensation of unity and connection was something that I had never experienced until I had detoxified my body. So with that, then I started to notice that without trying, I had a natural expression of who I was. It was a lot easier to express myself verbally, to express myself creatively. I'm a musician as well. To express myself athletically, right? And I still play soccer because I'm absolutely love the sport, right? And then any other kind of branches that I pour myself into, it's a lot easier to just show up as yourself when you are relatively unburdened by toxicity. Contrast that with how I was for the first 22, 23 years of my life where I had severe depersonalization. I didn't know who I was. I would feel like I was this kind of clay that I would mold myself to whatever environment I was around, or whatever person I was around, right? I didn't necessarily have my solid sense of self that I could show up as. And so Jyoti means light, essence, right? And so it just came to me naturally that I think it's a good way to encapsulate what my work is all about, which is about really allowing your real essence to shine through. If you notice, my logo too is it's the symbol of Earth, right? As in, I work a lot on detoxification and minerals to balance the Earth within us, really. And then there's like kind of a gold around it because it allows, again, your essence to shine through. So, anyways, I don't really talk too much about that, but that is my intention with my work, right? I want people to have a sort of awakening, not just healing.
No, I love that. And I think one of the many things that toxins and some of the things that kind of come into our body, these chronic stealth infections, is they really suppress, our body's ability to heal itself. But I love the way that you described it, your body's ability to express itself and interact with the environment, because I think that is so true. And I'm a chiropractor, and in the chiropractic world, we talk about suppressive healthcare, which is basically, oh, the body is, creating XYZ symptom. So we're going to medicate it or do something to suppress that symptom, versus expressive healthcare, which is we want to remove obstacles in the path that prevent the body from being able to function at its peak. And so, an example of that might be if somebody had a fever. Well, the fever isn't coming from the bug or whatever. The fever is your body's expression or your body's attempt to deal with whatever's going on. And so if you take a suppressive therapy, it kind of squashes your body's ability to deal with that. And it can cause issues. Not that you would never do that, but in many cases. And so, the goal of expressive healthcare is to try to remove those obstacles. And that it aligns so well with what I've been trained to do and what I've tried to do in my own practice. So I love hearing that.
Yeah, beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. I mean, even within parasite cleansing, for example, most people don't know that it is mostly our own immune system that takes care of the bugs, right? And a lot of the herbs
Oh
are
yeah.
just signaling our immune system to activate them. So if, for example, you have the situation where I was, where my army, my inner army, right, my immune system did not have the bullets to keep things in check, right? So I didn't have any of the minerals. I didn't have really any good sense of modulation of my immune system. So they were untrained, right? And then I asked them to try to take out these chronic infections, these chronic invaders. It did not really go well, right?
Yeah, you're asking a lot, and you've got, just a few little guys on your side. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
now, alongside your wife, Sundari, you guys are working on a healing center, and you've got a vision there on, this community of holistic health and recovery. So what inspired that, and what kind of led you guys to go that direction?
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you brought this up. So the short of it is that my wife had a stepdad who was a beautiful man, um, but he lost the battle with addiction, and we lost him a few years ago, and it had a really deep impact on her, and she took that pain and eventually channeled it into serving the recovery community. So people dealing with substance abuse issues, alcohol issues, right? And so I've been just kind of there supporting, doing some work at the centers occasionally, or trying to figure out. We do events sometimes as well, like fundraisers and such. So it can involve music or it can involve wellness. But mainly we're doing a lot of work in recovery centers. And yeah, it's just a way to try to share the tools that we wish that he had maybe had, that would have maybe had him still with us today. So so yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I know that you guys with your heart and everything, you're going to make a big impact. So
Thank you.
keep it up. Keep working towards it. So I know one of the tools that you use in your practice is hair tissue mineral analysis. Is something that I've used in the past as well. What is it that you like about those hair tests? And what do you think is unique about the hair tests compared to some other labs that are out there?
Yeah, so there's a lot of advantages of hair testing versus blood. One of the things that happens with blood is that a lot of the markers have a lot of variance day to day. A lot of the immune markers, for example, or even our cholesterol can vary greatly depending on even the stress you had that morning before a blood draw.
Mhm.
Right. So hair testing is a more medium term time frame, 3 to 5 months of assessing biochemistry. That's the first advantage. The other advantage is that it's not just about seeing the minerals in the hair, because a lot of practitioners see hair analysis and interpret it as you have low sodium, that means you need more salt, or you have low copper, that means you're deficient in copper. And hair analysis is actually a very deep science that has been explored for about 50, 60 years now. And what was found is specifically Dr. Pollack is probably the main pioneer in the hair
Yeah.
analysis space. He found through analyzing millions of hair tests, gathering the data and correlating it with the minerals in the hair, that different states of disease and health are correlated with different ratios and different patterns on the hair, right? And so what that means is low sodium can, for example, mean low adrenal function, right? Or high calcium can mean a decrease of cell membrane permeability. And
Mhm.
from that, we can actually not just assess the levels, because there are some levels we can see, like low selenium can be a good indicator of low selenium in the body. We can also see what is the adrenal glands doing, what is the thyroid gland doing, right? Um, what is the liver doing? What is the kidneys doing? What are how's the cell voltage, right? The cell membrane permeability. We can even see some of the emotional states of a person, right? That does tend to show up on a hair test. We can see their ability to detoxify generally. All this is shown indirectly by the mineral patterns on the hair. And the other thing that came out of Dr. Pollack's research is that you can modify the ratios and the levels on the hair, and that will actually improve the amount of energy that the body has to heal itself. Right. And so it's a very precise way of rejuvenating a person, where you can more or less do things by yourself, low and slow, with high quality products. You can rejuvenate yourself in that regard. Hair analysis is kind of like the airplane method to that, where someone who is in what's called a fast oxidation state, for example, where the adrenal and thyroid glands are really kicking it, they're going to need a different blend of vitamins, minerals, and glandulars than someone who is in, for example, four lows, which is a different state of biochemical activity. And with that guidance, we can not only see how where a person is and what they need exactly in that moment from a nutritional standpoint and a remineralization standpoint, but we can also see how things change over time, because it's a 3 to 5 month time frame. And with periodic retests, one can see, oh, well, we are improving their adrenal ratio, we're improving their thyroid ratio, right? We are bringing down the amount of calcification in the body. Oh, we're dumping a lot of bio unavailable manganese, we're dumping a lot of nickel, or a lot of mercury, or a lot of lead. And we get to see these cool progress indicators along a person's healing journey. It's also super easy to do, right? I mean, it is like just take a little sample of dry, clean hair and send it in an envelope to a laboratory, right? And so there's also that advantage. So yeah, it's a tool I absolutely love. It is one of the cornerstones of my practice, just because of how much information I can get from it. The only caveat with hair testing is that there is different styles of interpretation and there are different laboratories. So some laboratories don't have good standardized procedures to keep the electrolytes in the hair showing up accurately and consistently. So for example, they will chemically wash the hair and then you no longer know if the sodium and
Yeah.
potassium is accurate, right? And that's like doctor's data. The laboratories that I generally accept and trust are going to be analytical research labs and trace elements, at least in the US. I know there's others in Europe and Canada and such. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got experience with analytical research and Paul Eck too,
Awesome.
reading some of his work and going through those. So You're bringing back a lot of terms that I used to hear a lot, so that's kind of fun.
Amazing.
So the hair tissue test is a great test, and I really enjoy, the mineral patterns that can show up and kind of give you a window into what's been going on with that person. As you said, not just like at that exact moment, but over the last several months, which I think can be so valuable. And there's many other tests out there to kind of get a clue what's going on with the person. But having that baseline, I think, is so important of, okay, where's the person at? What are they dealing with now? What are their challenges? What are their limitations? And how can we move the needle? And one of the things that you really focus on, and myself as well, is the order of operations, or the order of detox. Can you elaborate on that concept and share how you guide clients through that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So, something I often tell my clients is right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing,
Yeah.
right? Because the same things that can create such profound changes later in a person's journey can absolutely destroy them at the wrong time. So, so I have a sort of system that I follow. And then within that, I try to address a person's core issues along the way with modifications, right? So what I'm going to share is the general system, the general way I approach this kind of framework that gets moved around as needed, right? So take this all with a grain of salt in that regard. But generally, let's say I'm starting with a client who is in a similar position that I was, completely destroyed, cannot tolerate any supplements, tolerate very few foods, just really in complete mental and physical torture, right? The first steps are pre-tox, right? So that is before even drainage. That is before any minerals or anything. That is, how do we stabilize the nervous system to a reasonable degree with limbic system work, right? So that is going to be things like the Gupta program. That is going to be things like breath work. There's different techniques you can do at home very easily. That is going to be things like tapping, like EFT. There's many tools available to us, and it's just about exploring and finding the ones that work for that particular case. I also like to do some mast cell support if a person is in really bad condition. There's a lot of advantages to doing that. Generally, it's symptomatic for the most part, but it helps put out the fire when someone is in really bad shape, so they can at least tolerate some of the tools that will progress them forward, right? So mast cell support, really what mast cells are, they're very primitive parts of our immune system that they kind of have a scorch the earth style of approaching different pathogens. And in people who have a lot of immune dysfunction and a lot of parasite overgrowth and a lot of heavy metals, these mast cells tend to lose their minds and just go scorched earth. And so as a result, there's a lot of excess histamine and a lot of reactivity. It can present in a lot of different ways because there's histamine receptors all over our body, but there is a lot in our brain as well. So brain fog is a very common symptom of excess mast cell activity. But some of the classic ones are going to be like food intolerances, itching, rashes, hives, and then some of the brain fog related symptoms. So mast cell stabilizers are what I'm referring to. It's good, I think, for really, really sensitive cases to consider that early on. Some of my favorite products in this line are going to be Neuroprotect, HistaAid. I like Holy Basil by Gaia Herbs, DAO, right? That's going to help degrade excess histamine. Yes. Mm-hmm. Some of the binders like zeolite, really high quality zeolite caveat, right? So something like Zeobind or KI zeolite, since it stays in the gut, can bind to excess histamine as well and help lower that load. And then there's other tools as well, but I think those are some of the most heavy hitters, some of the most effective. Of course, there's the medical ones like ketotifen too, but that's not really my lane to prescribe anything. So mast cell support can be really helpful. And then the other thing I like to do as well is to really focus on the gut first and foremost, because the gut is screwed up in most people. It's always the part of the picture. Whenever someone has any chronic symptom going on, there's always some sort of gut issue going on too. Even if it is very mild, just a small amount of intestinal permeability can create systemic inflammation, and that can slow everything down dramatically. But when a person is really in bad shape, rejuvenating that mucosal lining in the gut and sealing those tight junctions as much as possible is one of the biggest bangs for your buck, because then you will be able to tolerate the foods and supplements that you are taking more easily, and you'll be able to absorb them better, right? So you can actually start absorbing your nutrition better, you can actually start absorbing the supplements you're taking better instead of just excreting them out right away. And then any further detox and drainage work, for example, supporting the liver, when you push it into the gut, there's going to be less recirculation due to a decreased intestinal permeability. So really focusing on the gut is I think one of the highest leverage things you can do for tough cases early on. There's a lot of tools here. Some of the simplest ones are things like slippery elm bark powder. I like mountain rose herbs. You can make a nice tea with it. It's gelatinous and it soothes the intestinal tract. You can do aloe vera, fresh or capsules. You can do things like acacia gum for the people that tolerate it. It's a nice form of soluble fiber. The binders as well can sometimes be useful early on. Some people who are really sensitive don't tolerate them yet, but some of the binders like Zeobind, it's an intestinal focused zeolite, or Enteris gel, which is a methylated silica. That is a really fantastic tool to help heal the gut early on.
Hey friend, real quick, if you've been enjoying this episode and you're looking for high quality professional grade supplements that you can trust, I've got something for you. Check out our curated online store at discoverhealth.gethealthy.store. We've handpicked practitioner grade supplements that can be delivered straight to your door. And to say thank you for listening, you can use the code FIRST10 to get 10% off your order. That's discoverhealth.gethealthy.store. Your health simplified.
Yeah. Okay. So, but just briefly a little bit more on the gut. So that methylated silica, right, Enteris gel, is one of the best tolerated binders for people who are even very sensitive. It's a Russian product that's marketed mainly for IBS, but turns out that it's a great toxin binder too. So it binds to a lot of biotoxins, a lot of lipopolysaccharide, but it also binds to some heavy metals too. It binds to aluminum, which is very important for our times, which most people are very aluminum toxic.
Yes.
So I find it a very, very helpful binder early on. Beyond that, there's a few more gut healing tools I really like Mega Mucosa or Megaspore Biotic can be very helpful. Ion gut support can be helpful, but I don't find them, it's not always tolerated by the very sensitive. So after pre-tox, right, and then within pre-tox, we also need to think about cleaning up your external environment. Right. So it's not just about what you're taking. You want to reduce what you're being exposed to regularly. And there's a few high leverage things that really make a big difference here. I think reducing your electromagnetic field exposure is absolutely critical. One of the main reasons why is because the electromagnetic fields, the man-made electromagnetic fields, like from Wi-Fi, cell phone communications, they were never properly safety tested, right? For long-term use, right? So a lot of the safety studies were done on short periods of time where nothing really shows up. But after several years of exposure is when you see the increases in immune dysregulation and cancer. There's also other studies that do show some of the biochemistry of what happens when you're exposed to excess Wi-Fi, like the formation of peroxynitrite. And there's a bunch of other mechanisms of damage I'm not really going to get into here, but for the most part, it's important to understand that you will not have optimum energy levels and immune function and detoxability if you are exposed to too much Wi-Fi, right? Now, this isn't something to be afraid of either, because Wi-Fi is cumulative, right? And so it's not the one time you use your cell phone. It's not the one time you're doing an interview on a computer, right? It is the regular usage without ways to reduce it and remediate it. And so I want to talk about some of the highest leverage things I often share with my clients. I would say, in my opinion, the three biggest exposures for people, forgetting if you're living next to a cell phone tower, right? Because that's a whole other thing. But the three biggest exposures at home is often Wi-Fi, first and foremost, because the cell phone, really the Wi-Fi at home is like a cell phone tower. Right? It's grossly overpowered. And you can actually get things like a Wi-Fi cover from lessemf.com to reduce the emissions by 90 to 95% and still get really, really fast internet in the same room or the room next to you, right? So that's a big thing. I'd also say just turn the Wi-Fi off as much as possible, or call your internet company and see if you can hardwire your connection and have just no Wi-Fi at all if you're willing to do that. That can go a long way in creating a good sanctuary at home, right? Have people get a Wi-Fi timer, so you can go on Amazon and get like a $15 timer, and then just set your thing to turn off between 12 and 7 a.m. Because we're actually more sensitive to the Wi-Fi when we're sleeping. Right? The other thing is the cell phone. I mean, especially my generation is just completely addicted to their cell phones, spending hours and hours a day. And boundaries in life are generally very healthy to practice with people, with careers, with all that stuff. But I think one of the places people most need boundaries is with their cell phones, because if you don't have good boundaries with your cell phone, it's going to consume you, and it's going to consume your mental space and your mental real estate that you should be devoting to crafting the life that you love. So cell phones, they have that psychological effect. But then, of course, they are also really, really blasting people with a lot of EMF, right? Electromagnetic field radiation. So simple ways to reduce that is just to turn your phone on airplane mode, put it in the other room, and leave it alone when you are in focus mode. It's really that simple. I've also found that people that are struggling can do things like time blocking apps, right, to limit their use of different addictive apps. And if that doesn't work for them, if they still find they're overwriting it, to actually give their password to a loved one and have them change it, and then they have no choice, right? That was a game changer for me personally. I had quite an addiction to YouTube and learning new things, and so I had to get my wife to help me with that particular boundary. So what people will find is that as they reduce their overall usage, they're going to have more energy, and that more energy is going to lead to better ability to heal. Right. The final thing I'll say too is there's household wiring. It's called dirty electricity. I'll keep this brief. Just look into Stetzer filters, or Greenwave as well as another company that does that. But really, it's about reducing the EMF pollution that comes from dirty harmonics flowing through the household wiring. And by using what's called Stetzer filters, you can reduce that. And that is one of the better researched forms of EMF pollution. There's a lot of studies with schools impacting performance, ADHD, impacting also the immune system and blood sugar and cancer progression. So it's very well researched and it's very effective, right? So that's a big one. There's other stuff I could talk about too, but just, get a shower filter, drink high quality water, fix up your diet, all the basic stuff you cannot really go without, right? You need to build a solid foundation and go with the simplest stuff first before you progress to deeper work, right? And if you stack the deck in your favor early on, anything else you build on top of it will be a lot more effective, right?
I totally agree. This
Yeah.
is like gold. This is so great. So I hope people are taking notes. I hope people, maybe if you need to listen to this again, so many great ideas to really set yourself up for success if you're working on health goals, or if you're just trying to prevent some issues in the future. Simple things that you can do at home. So this is great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. It's my pleasure. I will say something briefly on the water too. Most people's water is not doing it for them. People think that the carbon filters or the refrigerator filters are going to cut it, and they really don't. If you actually test the water, they are often still very toxic. Of course, the water we're getting from tap is filled with pharmaceutical residues and heavy metals, and you can actually check what's in your tap water by going to a website called EWG, right? And you can look up a tap water report and see what's in your water and see if that's something you actually want to be drinking if you're still drinking tap water for some reason. So I would highly recommend either getting a spring water source that is high quality. And that can be something like Mountain Valley Spring, or going to findaspring.org. You can find springs close to you that are often tested for their quality, or getting a water distiller is an amazing investment, and then remineralizing your water. So My Pure Water is my favorite water distiller. It's absolutely awesome. I'm crushing that every day. And it is safe to use as well. You shouldn't really be getting your minerals from your water anyways. You should be getting your minerals from your food. So what you generally want are electrolytes. So just throw in some sea salt, some lemon juice, or something like Elite electrolytes to your distilled water, and you'll be A-okay, right? And it's the cleanest water you can drink, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's huge. So moving on. Steps after that are then really focused on drainage, because drainage is really the simplest way to detoxify someone. Everyone's so focused on how do we get stuff out of the cells? How do we mobilize the mercury from in there, right? How do we get the aluminum out? Everyone's toxic in glyphosate. How do we get that out, right? And they all have their place along the journey. But ultimately, the simplest way is to help your body do what it wants to do, which is heal you and detoxify. And by opening drainage, you are going to support that process. Drainage specifically refers, at least is my definition, the way toxins flow from the cells all the way out into the gut and all the steps in between, right? And that includes the extracellular matrix, so the space outside the cells, the lymphatics, the liver, and the gut. We already touched on the gut. Gut is absolutely important. And even if you're already healthy, there is still benefit usually on working on the gut first. But then you want to think about the other aspects of our drainage funnel, which is your liver, your lymphatics, your extracellular matrix again. And within that, I'll throw in some mitochondrial function as well. It's good to think about how much energy you can produce upfront, right? So after the gut, I will typically focus on the liver quite directly. There's so many tools available to us for supporting the liver. But the liver is amazing. I mean, it does so much for us. People really don't realize how much of a gold mine it is in terms of focusing on it, how it can impact different systems of the body, right? I mean, it helps process our thyroid hormone and make it active, for example, right? So people who have an excess of inactive thyroid hormone can actually support the liver and improve that aspect and have more energy, right? Or how it processes a lot of the toxic estrogens, right? And helps men have healthy amounts of testosterone, or how it processes vitamin D, right? It helps us have healthy vitamin D levels. Not to mention that the quality of our bile that is produced by the liver, that is going to dictate how we absorb fat soluble nutrients, right? Like our vitamins A and our vitamin E and so on and so forth. So there's just so much benefit that can come from giving your liver a lot of love. And most people's liver needs a lot of love today. Not to mention too, our liver is one of the most fascinating organs because it can rejuvenate itself completely, right? I mean, there's a study done, if you actually physically remove 80% of the liver, it'll actually regrow itself to a normal size, right? And regain normal function. Like, that is unbelievable. So you have to really assault your liver for an extended period of time to have it kind of fail out on you. So a lot of tools that I like for this, kale support from Cellcore is awesome. It doubles as kidney support, which is relevant for some people who have kind of some issues there, some stuck metals there often. So kale support's awesome. I also love the Tutka. So the advanced Tutka from Cellcore is amazing. I love coffee enemas. So if you've never heard of them, you should look into it. So I have to say there's two groups of people, right? There's the people that have never heard of coffee enemas. They hear it and they're like, what in the hell are you even talking about? And then there are the people who have tried it and have had their lives changed by it. Right? I mean, there's almost no in between. They're that potent because they will increase the amount of glutathione S-transferase in the liver, which is one of the enzymes we use to actually conjugate glutathione to toxins. So it speeds up the processing of toxins in the liver. It helps support bile flow, which is going to help your small intestine. Your microflora is going to help your nutrient absorption. It's going to help dump the toxins that are in the bile as well. And not to mention, it's going to cleanse your colon. The more you poop in the process, right, the better you're going to do, right? And if you're constipated, that's something you should focus on right away. And one of the simplest ways to do that is coffee enemas, right? I mean, they're just so effective for that. They're generally very well tolerated. Something I like to do with some of my clients a little bit later on is we'll do Tutka enemas. So you can actually get a capsule of advanced Tutka or like body bio Tutka and add it to a coffee enema or have it by itself. And it will make for an amazing way to flush your liver and support your energy levels and inflammation while you're at it too. So it's amazing stuff. There's so many other tools though. I love phosphatidylcholine. It's really good for building up your bile and your cell membranes. I love different bitter herbs like dandelion and milk thistle and gentian and artichoke. They all have their place. There is also the space for the nutrients, right? So sulfur-based nutrients from food, right? Or N-acetylcysteine or glycine. All these have their places. That's kind of a lot to get into, but just know there's a lot of different ways to support your liver. And I would say the ones I shared are probably some of the most effective I've seen. Later on, people can consider liver flushes too. They're not always tolerated. So there's different kind of degrees to building up to stronger flushes. I would say coffee enemas are often a good introduction into that. And then if people do enough coffee enemas, they'll eventually tolerate liver flushes. But liver flushes I've seen actually really create some dramatic results too. They can really physically open up the gallbladder, remove a lot of these gallstones, which some people argue is that the lemon juice and the olive oil creating these stones. And I would say no, because you can see those stones come out regardless of whether you're doing a liver flush or not. But anyway, so I love that. Global Healing Center has an awesome liver flush program that is cheap and you can do by yourself. It's very, very easy, right? After that, then, want to think about supporting lymphatics. I also like to support the mitochondria somewhat early on. That is going to be generally the realm of minerals and vitamins. So that is where mineral balancing is often taking place. I'm often doing a low dose mineral balancing to support a person's biochemistry so they can have more energy. I also do like Cellcore's CT minerals and BCATP. They're absolutely amazing for a lot of different purposes in supporting your general energy. The more energy you have, the more easily you can detoxify, right? So there's a lot more I could say on drainage, but I think that encapsulates some of the most important stuff, right? And if you focus on drainage, high quality minerals, vitamins, cleaning up the external environment, then also trying to work on some of the higher level factors like your emotional body and your mental body, you'd be surprised by how far just that can take you. By the way, I didn't even mention binders. Binders are like a cornerstone of a good detox program. There's so many, but they are so, so, so important to help you deal with the toxic onslaught. And I do want to say that there are dumb binders like charcoal and bentonite clay that I generally don't recommend unless you're getting food poisoning or some crazy thing. And then there's intelligent binders you can use over a long term, like the Cellcore binders, like Pectisol, like Enteris gel. There's a few others like that. So binders will really, really just do so much for helping you reduce your toxin load in a very gentle way without any of this mobilization and oxidative stress that can come from chelation, right? And so if you focus on just that, the things I just mentioned, you'd be surprised by how many cases will actually get to a very stable place and a very relatively good place. It may take some time, but I've seen a lot of people get there with just some of those tools. Beyond that, then things that I like to think about, I like to think about immune modulation, right? So mast cell support is immune modulation, but higher level immune modulation is working on the retroviral stress. So this is something that Dr. Judy Mikovits has brought to the forefront many years ago, and only now are practitioners applying it. And actually, a lot of Lyme doctors were applying this and didn't realize they were actually treating a lot of the retroviruses with some of their Lyme herbs, right? So like Chinese skullcap is actually a fantastic antiretroviral. And that's one of the best Lyme herbs as well. And what happened is that people think retroviruses, right? Retroviruses are these viruses that embed themselves into our DNA, right? They're not just that they come and they take over cells and they replicate, but they actually embed themselves into people's DNA. And it's not even so much about the ones you get exposed externally. What it actually is that our genome is already 8% retroviruses, right? So 2% of our genome is for coding proteins, DNA, and or RNA, so on and so forth, right? But the 8% of our genome, right, that was part of it's supposed to be junk, is actually endogenous retroviruses. And these are viruses that embedded themselves into humans over millions of years of evolution. And our bodies have had to develop some very intensive ways of keeping them silenced, mainly methylation and acetylation. And what had happened in our modern environment is that different triggers, different stressors has created an unleashing of the retroviruses that are deep within our DNA already. And when they express, they generally cause immune dysfunction. And when you cause immune dysfunction, you cannot keep a lid on the parasites. You then cannot keep a lid on the Lyme. You cannot keep a lid on even the metal toxicity, because then people are overloaded with biotoxins. And so I have found focusing on retroviruses before even any of the parasite cleansing has completely changed the game for my toughest cases, because my toughest cases, the ones that tend to not respond to anything, often have the highest degree of retroviral stress. So don't just take my word for it. I highly recommend people look into Judy Mikovitz's lectures and Dr. Klinghart's lectures on human endogenous retroviruses. It's an absolutely fascinating topic. And it is, it's been an absolute game changer. So there's a lot of different herbs that address this. And interestingly, some of the Cellcore products already have some antiretroviral support within there, like the broccoli sprouts that's within biotoxin binder, or the olive leaf and the St. John's wort that's within drainage activator. These all have some very nice retroviral silencing properties that can really help a person have an easier time with deeper work, right? And so, and there's so many triggers, like the Wi-Fi is a trigger of that. The vaccinations, unfortunately, are a trigger of that. And so COVID was another big trigger of that, by the way, that definitely created a unleashing of those retroviruses. And that is actually an example why people who get mono sometimes can crash for the rest of their life with chronic fatigue. It's not even the mono, because often people will treat the mono and they won't get any better. It's that the retroviruses have now become activated and they need to be silenced, right? So that is something I work on my practice usually before any parasite cleansing. And I've seen some amazing shifts with that. And then when I actually get into parasite cleansing, parasites are unbelievably common. I mean, it could be a whole podcast by itself, right? And I'm sure your podcast with Dr. Todd Watts, you probably talked a lot about parasites. So it's ubiquitous issue, right? I mean, as he says, if you have a pulse, you have parasites. And for some reason, we think about always deworming our dogs and deworming horses, and we know it extends their lifespans, but yet we think us humans don't have parasites. The reality of it is that parasites have a huge role even in ecology. There's so many parasites that infect so many different species of animals that influence their behavior, influence their psychology, and can literally make the difference between them surviving and going extinct, right? There are species of fish that get infected by parasites that then cause them to go to the surface of a lake, then get eaten by a bird. And it's all the parasite needing the life cycle of the fish to then go to the bird and then continue that going on. And so they'll literally mind control the fish to go to the top of a lake and get eaten. I mean, stuff like that is just absolutely crazy. And so, believe it or not, parasites can have a huge impact on people's neurochemistry and can have a huge impact on how people behave and how they show up in the world. And eliminating parasites can be almost like a sort of exorcism in some ways, right? I mean, it can really create some dramatic changes in how people show up, right?
Yeah.
So there's a safe way to do it, right? Doing all the things I just mentioned before, I think, are wise considerations. Unfortunately, the testing is inadequate when it comes to parasites.
Oh,
yeah, that's a whole other issue as well. I wish we had good testing for parasites, but it's just not the case. And there's a lot of reasons why. But I do find that 8 out of 10 of my clients do see visible parasites if you do things properly. So I work on parasites at that point. I won't really get too much into that here, but I go large to small, eventually ending with liposomal herbs that reach the deepest parts of biofilm and deepest parts of our brain. And that can really turn the lights on for someone. Afterwards, then you have all the biohacking stuff, then that becomes relevant, right? The remineralization stuff can be dialed up even more because the body's really primed for that. And so if people do nootropics, if people do their cold plunges and do their other kind of longevity hacks, it is a lot more effective in a relatively low toxin body than otherwise. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. So I love what you've shared so far, and just brilliant thinking through those steps and doing one thing in order, and doing it in this order is so important, as compared to like the perfect, we'll say, the perfect microbial parasite, protocol doesn't really work if you don't improve the drainage and really calm down the immune system. It can really make someone worse. And so thinking through these steps, or working with a practitioner that can think through these steps with you or for you, can make all the difference when it comes to whether you're going to have success or whether you're just going to end up pushing all these supplements to the back of to the back of your cabinet and never reaching for them again. So
Yeah.
that brings me to another question. What are the most misunderstood, or should we say overhyped ideas in detox or wellness that you wish people would stop believing, or that people need to move on from those ideas?
That's a juicy one. There's so many. Oh my God, I don't even know where to start. I try to call them out as much as I can. I'll say one is the use of nanozeolites. Nanozeolites, for the most part, can be pretty dangerous. I've seen quite a few cases of people who have come to me and have had their lives essentially ruined by nanozeolites, where they were sort of symptom free before, and all of a sudden all hell broke loose after using one.
Yeah.
This is partially due to the redistribution, right? So the pulling of things from safe places and redistributing it to unsafe areas like the brain. And then also some of these zeolites are just not properly made, right? So sometimes they're made in a laboratory, so they're not even a real zeolite, which is a volcanic clay. Other times they damage the structure by making it nano, and then you have a breaking apart of the aluminum silicate, which can introduce aluminum toxicity to people. People are already aluminum toxic, so it makes things a lot worse. So I would really, really advise against that, in my opinion. Even some of the micronized can be problematic for some people. So that is why the HMET binder from Cellcore is later on. It's not upfront. But
Right.
I do find that the gut focused zeolites, the one with a larger particle size that stay in the gut, again, like Zeobind or Lava Vitae, if you're in Europe, that will not be problematic with the redistribution and mobilization issue, and will generally be a really gentle gut healer that binds to a lot of stuff that we do not want, like mycotoxins and ammonia and histamine, right? So I think that's probably one of the big ones. The other misconception I would say is to stop waging war against yourself, right? To stop feeling like you just need to like kill everything. Stop needing like you need to take all these parasite killing herbs right away, and that you need to detoxify all that is nasty within you. I think the higher expression of this work is how can you empower yourself to become resilient to the world around you? And how can you balance your immune system so it can reduce the pathogens to a reasonable degree and then integrate what is left? I think it's really not realistic to think you can get rid of all your parasites, to get rid of all the spirochetes, to get all of the viruses out. But what you can do is you can reduce the numbers to a way where they're no longer causing an issue and integrate what is left, because our immune systems are absolutely brilliant. They do most of the parasite cleansing for us anyways. So if you let them do their work, they will patrol the bad guys and keep them in check, and sometimes even make it beneficial. Something that people don't know is that parasites actually work like a bioremediator for toxicity. It can actually mop up a lot of heavy metals, mop up a lot of pesticides for us, concentrated in their tissues, so the toxins don't kill us, right? And there is something to consider there of like, well, how much of it is parasitic and how much of it is symbiotic, right? Now, most of the time, though, they still do take more than they give back. And so parasite cleansing is still very relevant for so many conditions. But integrating what is left can allow you to get some of the benefits without any of the side effects, right? Or the negative
Yeah.
effects. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think those are probably my two biggest ones. Yeah, I mean, I could probably go on and on, but I think those are the two biggest ones.
Yeah, those are big.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for taking the time to join me today and walking us through detoxification and doing things in order, and also your backstory. It's really fascinating to hear, how people got into the work that they do and why. And if someone wanted to learn more about you, or someone wanted to get in contact with you, how could they find you? How could they reach out to you?
So people can find me at my website. So that's Jyoti Mineral Balancing, or Jyoti MB, right? So like M for mineral, MB.com for short. And Jyoti is spelled JYOTI. So it would be JYOTI MB.com. I also do keep people updated on my Instagram. So people can find me at Kyle underscore Peche, Peche. There, and my website with my email list is where I keep most people updated with all the stuff I'm doing. I'm always pumping out content for anyone who is interested. So yeah, you can check me out there.
Well, great. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to the Discover Health podcast. Remember, your health is a journey, not a destination. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next week.